You wake in a golden chamber, but the sheets reek of iron and rot. The air is heavy, perfumed not with roses but with the stench of slow decay. Every surface gleams with riches, walls painted in gold, chalices spilling jewels. Yet beneath your fingertips the silk is damp, stained, as if the bed itself were bleeding. Power surrounds you, dazzling and suffocating, but your body whispers betrayal. What use is a throne when your veins crawl with sickness? What victory lies in ruling, if every breath feels borrowed from death itself? You lift your head, and the mirrors refuse to show your face, only a hollow blur, as though even glass cannot bear to remember you. On the table, the crown waits, cold, unyielding. You place it on your head, but it slips, heavy, sliding lower, until it rests not upon your brow, but upon the skull you are becoming. They never named it aloud. In courts drowning with incense and roses, the truth slithered only in whispers, hushed as though the word itself could stain the marble floors. Syphilis, an illness carried like a curse, too filthy for a king's tongue, too shameful for a queen's ear. Instead, they masked the sores with powders, the fevers with perfumes, the trembling with prayer. You feel it in the silence, the way courtiers glance without looking, the way physicians bow without daring to speak. Every cough, every blemish, every tremor becomes a rumor, a shadow spreading faster than the disease itself. And in that silence, the crown grows heavier, not only with gold but with paranoia, for rot that begins in the body soon poisons the kingdom. It came not as an army, but as a shadow, carried on the breath of sailors, hidden in the wounds of mercenaries. It crossed borders faster than any banner. They called it the Great Pox, but it was more than sickness. It was a phantom, a whisper that entered beds and thrones alike. You feel it stalking the night, faceless yet familiar, binding itself to bloodlines meant to last forever. Monarchs who believed themselves chosen by heaven awoke to find their flesh marked by something older, darker, unstoppable. No sword could strike it down, no prayer could banish it. Like a curse wrapped in human desire, it seeped into the veins of Europe, writing its prophecy of ruin in the very skin of kings. The throne became a stage, and power nothing but theater. Kings painted their faces with leaden powders, layering whiteness over the ulcers that gnawed at their skin. Queens drowned their bodies in rose water, hoping the perfume could outshout the stench of decay. Ceremonies glittered brighter than ever, as if the more fragile their flesh became, the more dazzling the spectacle must appear. You watched them smile through trembling jaws, lift goblets with shaking hands, dance while their bones ached beneath velvet and lace. Power was no longer strength. It was denial, a costume stitched from lies and silks. The court applauded, blinded by gold, pretending not to see the sores beneath the crown. But hypocrisy rots faster than flesh, and every mask eventually cracks. Behind the curtains of brocade, beneath the perfumes and powders, the bed became the truest stage of all. There, intimacy turned to betrayal, kisses carrying the taste of fever, embraces passing more than warmth. You feel the paradox, love offered as devotion, yet delivering ruin in secret. Queens who dreamed of heirs carried sickness instead. Kings who sought pleasure awoke to sores that no crown could disguise. The royal bed, once a symbol of union, became an altar of contagion, where vows dissolved into lesions and whispers of passion became whispers of shame. What greater cruelty than this, to find death nestled inside the arms of love, and to know that every touch was a risk wrapped in silk. The physicians knew, but their tongues were bound tighter than their sutures. In dim chambers, they scribbled symptoms in coded notes, careful that no word could be used against them. They applied mercury to rotting flesh, whispering that poison might heal poison, while the skin blistered and the gums bled. You see them bend low before their masters, offering flasks that burned like liquid fire, praying their lies might be mistaken for cures. Their loyalty was not to truth, but to survival, For a doctor who dared speak the forbidden name risked exile, or worse, silence by royal decree. So they became accomplices in the theater, guardians of the secret rot, watching power unravel under their trembling hands, and recording history in stains no one dared to read. You feel it now, the sores blooming beneath layers of silk, raw skin scraping against fabric meant to symbolize majesty. Jewels press heavy on your chest, but cannot weigh down the fever raging beneath your ribs. Courtiers see the glitter of gold, never the sweat that stains your sheets, the trembling that rattles your bones. You sit on the throne while your body convulses in secret, every smile stretched tight over pain you dare not name. Wealth cannot soothe flesh that burns, nor can crowns cool the heat of a dying body. The world bows before your image, yet you alone know the truth. The empire they worship is built on a body that is already collapsing into ruin. The disease did not stop at the skin. It crept upward, feasting on the mind. In the throne room, you feel the air thicken with madness. A king's laughter stretched too long, a queen's gaze darting like a trapped bird. Paranoia drips from every gesture, cruelty sharpened into policy, delirium dressed in robes of law. Courtiers kneel, unsure if mercy or rage will strike them next, as the crown shakes upon a trembling head. You sense the monarchy itself unraveling, decisions born not of wisdom, but of fever, edicts etched in delirious hands. What began as sores beneath silks now rots the very machinery of power. And as the mind falters, so too does the kingdom. For when reason dies in the body of a ruler, nations bleed with them. The legacy did not end with the crown. It seeped into the cradle. You see children born frail, their cries thin as whispers, their bodies already marked by the sickness of their lineage. Miscarriages cloaked the palace in silence, halls echoing with prayers that went unanswered. The disease became inheritance, a cruel dowry passed through sheets of silk, binding heirs before they could even walk. Kingdoms built on promises of dynasty found themselves haunted by empty nurseries and coffins too small to carry crowns. It was not just blood that carried decay, but empire itself, for when the womb falters, the throne trembles. And thus the sickness became more than flesh. It became history, a curse written into the very veins of power. Around you, the courtiers dance, their steps measured, their smiles carved too carefully to be real. They whisper behind fans, yet when the crown passes, their eyes drop, their tongues still. Gossip is the bloodstream of the palace, but truth is its poison, so they guard the illusion as fiercely as they spread the secret. Every bow becomes an act of complicity, every toast a vow of silence. You sense their fear, not of death, but of exposure, of a kingdom collapsing if the mask were torn away. The palace glitters like a theater, chandeliers blazing, laughter echoing, while beneath it all lies the quiet knowledge that their sovereign rots, and with him, the world they cling to. Alone, the mask dissolves. The monarch stands before the mirror, powders melting under sweat, perfumes unable to hide the stench rising from within. You watch as the glass betrays them, sores blooming across once cherished skin, teeth loosening, eyes hollowing like lanterns burned too long. The crown glitters above a face no longer their own, and in that reflection lies the cruelest truth, that power cannot disguise decay. Every morning brings the same horror, the same confrontation with flesh unraveling into something monstrous. Shame clings tighter than silk, pressing like chains against the ribs. To be worshipped in daylight and despised by your own reflection at night. This is the private torment of kings, the intimate betrayal of queens. The mirror whispers what courtiers will not. You are rotting, and the crown cannot save you. The cure was a cruelty all its own. You feel the sting of mercury pressed into open sores, the burning ointments searing deeper than the disease itself. Vapors fill the chamber, thick and metallic, invading lungs already weakened by fever. Physicians force open your mouth, pouring poison to chase poison, until gums bleed and teeth loosen, until every breath tastes of metal and despair. They call it healing, but it is closer to slow execution, a ritual of pain disguised as medicine. The body trembles, not knowing which enemy devours it faster, the sickness or the cure. And in that agony lies the bitter truth. Power can command obedience, but it cannot command salvation. You kneel in the chapel, the air thick with incense, but the prayers rise heavier than smoke. Lips murmur pleas for deliverance, yet behind them lingers the fear that no God will answer. The whispers say this illness is punishment, divine justice for lust, for pride, for sins carried from the bed to the throne. Each candle flickers like an accusation. Each hymn feels less like comfort, more like a verdict. You bow deeper, pressing forehead to stone, as though the earth itself might absolve you. But faith and guilt bleed together, tangled in secrecy, and the silence of the chapel grows unbearable. For even in the house of God, the disease follows, and every prayer ends with the same echo. You are forsaken. What spreads through the body soon spreads through the throne. The ulcers of flesh mirror the fractures of empire, each sore a symbol of corruption gnawing from within. You see kingdoms dressed in gold, yet hollowed by greed, courts glittering while famine festers beyond their gates. Just as the body collapses cell by cell, so too does power collapse decree by decree. The disease is not only in the blood, but in the silence of courtiers, in the lies of physicians, in the denial of monarchs who confuse ceremony with salvation. Empires rot as bodies rot, slowly, invisibly, until one day the collapse feels sudden though it was long foretold. And when the crown falls, it does not strike marble alone. It strikes centuries of decay that began in flesh. The bed, once a sanctuary, becomes a battlefield of betrayal. You feel the sheets cling damp against fevered skin, the warmth of a lover's breath carrying more than desire. Every kiss is a coin toss between love and death. Every embrace a wager against fate. Spouses lie side by side, bound not only by vows but by contagion, their devotion turned into a slow exchange of ruin. Trust withers where tenderness should bloom, and the heart recoils even as the body longs. To share a bed is to gamble with mortality, to wake each morning wondering which touch will be the one that seals your undoing. Love does not vanish. It curdles, poisoned by the knowledge that intimacy is now the sharpest betrayal. Whispers crossed borders faster than treaties. In Spain, in France, in England, the disease moved as silently as an ambassador, carried in bedsheets instead of scrolls. You picture royal courts shimmering with ceremony, yet behind their jeweled doors, the same sores fester, the same fevers gnaw. Diplomacy intertwined with infection. Marriages meant to unite empires instead braided their sicknesses together. A bride's dowry could carry jewels and the shadow of contagion. Kings dined at gilded tables, unaware that every toast bound them tighter to the phantom creeping through Europe. It was a hidden empire, one without armies or banners, ruling by silence, spreading by touch, until half a continent throbbed beneath the same curse, and power itself became nothing more than shared decay. At the end, the throne is no fortress, only a chair for the condemned. You feel the body betray itself piece by piece, eyes clouding until the world blurs to shadow, ears filling with phantom echoes, flesh collapsing into wounds that will not close. Madness coils tighter, voices hissing where courtiers once stood, paranoia replacing counsel, delirium replacing law. The monarch becomes prisoner of their own skin, trapped in a body that has turned dungeon, ribs like bars, sores like chains. No power can bribe the bones. No decree can command the blood to heal. You sense despair reaching its peak, for the kingdom may still bow, but the sovereign no longer rules. They are ruled by the cage of their own flesh, by the rot that devours without end. The crown tilts as the mind unravels. You hear the mutterings of kings raving at shadows, their eyes fixed on phantoms crawling across the throne room walls. Courtiers stand frozen as laughter turns to screams, as edicts dissolve into babble. The throne itself seems to tremble beneath their weight, as though refusing to bear a ruler lost to delirium. Gold slips against sweat-soaked skin, jewels rattling like teeth about to fall. In fevered visions, allies become assassins, servants become demons, and the crown becomes a serpent tightening around the skull. You feel the kingdom quake with every hallucination, for when the sovereign dreams in madness, the realm itself begins to fracture. And so the crown does not only adorn, it devours. Even as flesh sagged and teeth loosened, the rituals of beauty did not falter. Wigs towered higher, powder thickened until faces gleamed like wax effigies, and perfumes poured heavy to drown the stench of decay. You watch the palace transform into a mausoleum of denial, where every painted cheek is a mask against death, every jeweled smile a defiance of the grave already written beneath the skin. Courtiers bow before monarchs who look less alive than embalmed, their splendor a parody of power. The chandeliers blaze, the music swells, but is only theater for the dying, a carnival of wax and silk disguising the collapse of flesh. And beneath it all, silence waits, patient, unblinking, inevitable. It lingers, unseen, yet everywhere, a ghost pacing the gilded corridors. You feel its breath at the back of your neck, hear its whisper in the ears of kings as they raise trembling goblets. It does not wear chains, yet every step echoes louder than courtier songs. It drifts through bedchambers, settles into cradles, curls inside the marrow of heirs unborn. This specter has no crown, yet it rules, shaping destinies with a touch, rewriting dynasties with a kiss. It haunts the palace not as a fleeting sickness, but as a legacy, a reminder that power is porous, flesh is fragile, and even empires can be undone by a whisper. The ghost never leaves. It merely changes rooms, waiting for the next sovereign to breathe it in. The palace becomes a court of shadows, where truth skulks behind curtains and every gesture hides a secret. You see torches flicker across marble, casting shapes that seem more real than the courtiers themselves. Words are half-spoken, swallowed before they strike air, and eyes shift quickly away as if sight itself were dangerous. Nothing is confessed, yet everything is known, silence binding tighter than any oath. The walls themselves feel complicit, echoing whispers that never dared become screams. Paranoia seeps into the stones, into the very air, until the palace feels less like a home of kings than a theater of concealment. Here, power survives not by glory, but by what is hidden, and shadows become the only truth. They called it love, yet it carried the weight of a curse. In secret chambers, royal lovers embraced, only to awaken with the same burning sores, the same fever whispering death. You feel the tragedy, passion turned into contagion, devotion into slow execution. Some died quietly, hidden in remote estates, their names erased to protect the crown. Others lingered in courts, veiled behind powders and lace, their beauty dissolving day by day. Each kiss became an inheritance of ruin, each touch a vow written not in devotion, but in decay. To love a monarch was to gamble with your life, for beneath the silks and crowns waited not salvation, but a plague disguised as tenderness. The crown gleams eternal, untarnished by time, its jewels flashing as though mocking the fragility of the flesh beneath. Kings are buried, yet their regalia survives, gold resting upon velvet-lined coffins, circlets placed atop skulls as brittle as ash. In the silence of the crypt, the crown endures, a relic of office without a bearer. Disease strips away illusions faster than swords, revealing that no power, no title, no divine right can shield against decay. The weight of coronation becomes an irony. The crown is heir to itself, outliving each head it adorns. It whispers of immortality, but the lie is plain. Only metal lasts, while the hand that lifts it to the brow trembles and fails. The crown survives, but it is always searching for fresh flesh. In quiet chambers, long after the bells tolled for a sovereign, the physicians took up their pens. Not proclamations, not decrees, just private notes, tucked in journals, locked in drawers. They wrote of ulcers unhealed, of skin that mottled too quickly, of fevers that had no remedy. What they dare not speak in life found refuge in ink. Some wrote with trembling honesty, others with the bitterness of men blamed for failures they could never prevent. These secret confessions, unearthed centuries later, become whispers breaking the silence of courts. The disease that toppled kings was named not in sermons or scrolls, but in the lonely testimony of men who watched royal flesh collapse and carried the truth like a forbidden prayer. The disease did not only pass through blood and bed, it passed through silence. Chroniclers bent their quills to spare crowns from shame, softening sores into fevers, madness into melancholy, collapse into fate. To record too plainly was to wound the image of majesty, and so parchment became a shroud. Generations inherited this silence, repeating tales polished until they gleamed but concealed rot. The dignity of rulers was preserved in ink, but the honesty of history was lost. And yet, in margins, in rumors, in the letters never meant for eyes beyond the court, the truth lingered, waiting centuries to rise. The inheritance of silence was heavy, but silence, like the body, could not endure forever. History pretends at clarity, yet in its corridors walks a phantom. The disease that once consumed kings was written out with careful hands, but absence leaves its own shadow. You turn a page and feel the silence press, heavier than any word. Names gleam in triumph and conquest, but beneath the gilded lines lies a body unspoken, a fever unnamed. The phantom lingers in half-erased notes, in metaphors too cautious, in the cough that appears and vanishes between paragraphs. It hovers where truth was cut away, demanding remembrance. For history is not only what is said, it is what is hidden. And syphilis, denied a throne in the texts, claimed its place instead as a ghost that refuses to leave the palace of memory. What kings feared most was not the sword, nor even death, but the slow unveiling of weakness. To be mortal in private was one thing. To be diseased in public was a collapse of the very theater of monarchy. Power demanded the illusion of perfection, of a body beyond the reach of ordinary decay. Yet sores broke through powder, fevers betrayed the mask, and shame became the most faithful companion of the crown. In this shame, kingdoms trembled, for if the king could rot, then what was divine about rule? Mortality, once glimpsed, was contagious, not of blood, but of thought. And the thought that kings were fragile men was the true contagion that spread faster than any disease. The crown gleams still in portraits and museums, but its warning is sharper than its jewels. Power forever seeks to disguise its wounds, to paint decay in gold and call it eternity. Yet no empire, no dynasty, no sovereign body can hold back the seep of rot. Flesh betrays, illusions crumble, and history remembers the truth whispered beneath silks and hymns. What haunted monarchs haunts rulers still, the lie that power makes one untouchable. You, listener, stand among their echoes. Let the crown's glitter not blind you, for behind every diadem lies the same fragile skin. And when it breaks, the ruin spreads, not only in bodies but in kingdoms. The palace grows quiet. Perfumes that once fought against stench fade into dust. The candles gutter low, and corridors echo with no footsteps. Thrones sit heavy but empty, their velvet stiff with time. The masks of powder have crumbled. The bodies that wore them lie hidden in sealed tombs, their secrets still breathing through stone. Yet the disease does not die. It lingers, a residue of whispers, a ghost clinging to memory. In these abandoned chambers, history exhales its last sigh, and you feel it, the silence heavier than any crown. The kings are gone, the courts dissolved, but the rot they carried remains, not in flesh now, but in the story that survives. The mirror waits, patient as stone. In its surface, power dissolves. Crowns melt into shadow, jewels dull into dust, and what stares back is not majesty, but frailty. You see the sores that once festered beneath powdered faces, the trembling hands that once gripped scepters, the madness that once wore ermine robes. History whispers that syphilis was never merely a disease. It was a revelation, an unmasking. For all the ceremonies, perfumes, and lies, the truth gnawed its way outward, blister by blister, until the body itself betrayed the throne. And when you lean closer, when you dare to stare too long, the glass asks its question, what masks do you wear, and how long before your own flesh tells the truth? The kings are gone, but their mirror remains, and it does not lie.